What's going on, guys? Welcome to another quick tip video. Today we're going to be talking about overflow boxes and non-drill tanks. Things a little bit related to that. I know Scuba Steve, shout out to you. You had questions on this, and again, I'm fairly new at this, and here's what I've learned so far. So I'm going to give you guys a quick tip in terms of how to prevent certain things if you're looking to get an overflow. Alright, so the first thing is if you're getting an overflow box that does not require drilling in the tank, the very first thing that comes into mind is your siphon breaking. So this is the key part to this whole component part. I'll show you what happens when this breaks, things that you can kind of do to kind of prevent certain things from happening. Alright, so the very first tip that I can give you guys when you start this is make sure you check all your fittings for any leaks. Make sure you do a dry run. I did it for like about a day. Test every part that can actually leak. So for example, this piece down here, I went ahead and bought some metal clamps, clamped it. It didn't come with one, as you can see here. Definitely helps it. Also the piece that connects to this overflow box, there was a very small leak, maybe like one in every like several hours, but it still is considered a leak. So what I did was I went ahead and just completely just PVC sealed it with the glue, so it's completely sealed on that, and there's no leak anymore. And the other part would be down to your sump. You know, obviously make sure your sump doesn't leak, because you know it's a tank, you know, so the seals and stuff, wherever you buy that, make sure that doesn't leak. So what happens if the siphon breaks here? So when the siphon breaks here, I'm going to show you. It really depends on your sump. If you look at your sump over here, the water compartment is very small. So if you look at this tank here, it's 33 gallon long. So if that water gets pumped into here, that's fine. So that's kind of tip number one, is to have your overflow box here kind of low enough so that you can absorb whatever water that's in that sump into this tank, just in case if something happens where this siphon breaks and it starts pumping water into here. So that's kind of number one. And I'd rather have the pump kind of run dry versus water overflowing all over my floor, okay? So it really comes down to having this low enough so that you have some room to absorb some water, and then also your sump. Either if you buy it or if you make it yourself, the compartment that returns the water, you gotta have to make sure that that has very little water, so that you know whatever gets dumped into here is not that bad. So what I'm gonna show you real quick is I'm gonna break the siphon. I have this, you know, lifter here so that I can restart it real fast. So I'm gonna break the siphon, and I'm gonna show you guys. So if your siphon breaks in the middle of the day, this is exactly what will happen, right? Water will get pumped from the sump into here. As you can see, it's filling up. And that's pretty much it right there. You see the noise of the pump, it's running dry, and as you can see, the water level went right below this black rim. So I still have quite a while to play. So that's very important. I'm gonna cut off this. So that's very important to make sure that the overflow box is low enough so that your actual normal operating water line is low, so that it can absorb all that water, okay? So that's tip number one. All right, tip number two is to break your reverse siphon if it ever happens where you're pulling the plug to do maintenance, if your power goes out. That's another thing that's important is if your power ever goes out, obviously your outflow here is basically a siphon itself, and you don't want it to draw water from here all the way back into your sump. And also, if it does draw water all the way back into your sump, you know, make sure that your sump is large enough so it can absorb that water. But for me, my water line, as you can see over here, it's down here, and another good tip is make a hole. I don't know if you can see this, but it's kind of dark, but there is a small drilled hole behind the outtake here. So what happened is, if I have this in here, it's actually right up here, and the water line's down here. So there's air here. So if power ever goes out, it breaks the siphon right away, and whatever water that's in the tube will go back into the sump, and that's it. So I'm gonna quickly show you guys a normal operating procedure, and I'll just pull the plug, turn it off, and I'll show you guys how much water actually turns back into the sump. All right, guys, so this is normal operating levels in terms of when the sump's on, everything's working. The water line's here, and if you look at the sump, it sits like that. So what I'm gonna do is, like, for example, if your power goes out or your siphon doesn't break, what happens with this is it's just going to only pull the water that's in this tube back down to the sump, and the siphon's going to break right away because of this hole up here. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys real quick. And as you can see, whatever water that was in the tube is now back into the sump, and that's the level in terms of what water is actually in the sump. And that's it. I don't have to worry about, you know, this siphoning back in down to the sump because I have the water low enough. I don't have to worry about the siphon breaking, and if it does break, as you can see, the pump will just run dry, and I'd rather have the pump run dry, like I said, versus having water flow, overflow all over my floors. So this is kind of a safe method in terms of how you can do this. There's a couple other ways that you can help prevent some of this other stuff. So another thing that a lot of people do, I've seen on YouTube, is they'll drill a hole on here and then kind of put this air tube with this in here somewhere, and they'll basically use this to draw any air bubbles out of this U-tube to prevent any siphon breaks, and it'll just basically get thrown back into here. Another thing that I've seen people do is they'll put a check valve on the return pump so that water can only flow in one direction, and if it has a reverse siphon, it will stop it from coming back down. Definitely that's another method, and I almost considered getting that, but it restricts the flow a little bit. And like I said, if you make a hole up on your return, you don't have to worry about that, but definitely you can put a check valve on here, and that definitely will work too. So it really comes down to making sure that, you know, the sump that you make or the sump that you pick has a pretty good design where the compartment with the pump is actually returning doesn't have that much water, and if it does, you know, that your tank size is compatible in terms of absorbing that water. Alright guys, so I hope you guys learned some stuff, and let me know if you have any questions, and yeah, peace guys.